Welcome to Harbor Spaces, where refuge meets community. Harbor Spaces is more than just a name. It's a sanctuary, a place of shelter, safety, and belonging. It's where we come to anchor ourselves, reflect deeply, and reconnect with what truly matters. Inspired by the rhythm of nature and the ever-flowing waters, Harbor Spaces offers a grounding presence in a fast-moving world. Here, we revive the lost art of community, communication, cooperation, and collaboration. This is a space for seekers, those who long for peace, purpose, and authentic connection. So take a deep breath, settle in, and welcome home. This is Harbor Spaces. Thank you, Julie, for being here today. Today, our guest on Harbor Spaces is Julie Gandulla. Julie, could you give us a little background, a little information about who you are and how you see yourself in this world?
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
I guess who I am, let me think. I guess professionally, I am a mentor, educator, and I'm a consultant with my business, Rewilding. Personally, I would say I'm a philosopher and a mother and a friend and a lover of nature and a deep lover of challenge.
Beautiful. Rewilding is your company. What is that? Could you give a little explanation about?
Yeah, absolutely. So Rewildings is a business I started about 5 years ago. I was inspired to do that because I had done work previously with crisis counseling and with suicide intervention, and then also just through my own journey of healing and, the tribulations that we all endure with life.
Yeah.
And I got to a point where I really wanted to give back and help, but I wanted to get to a place where I was helping prior to crisis, that intervention point where you hope that a person doesn't get to their worst, darkest state. And so I really sat down with my mentor and I was prepared to go into graduate school for therapy, but I just wasn't in alignment with the philosophies. And so he worked with me to create Rewilding. It's based on primal ancestral health. It's based on, at its core, reconnection, that we live in a modern world across culture that dissects us from the different parts of ourselves, whether it's mind is dissected from body, emotion dissected from mind, or individual dissected from community, or human, separated from the natural world and animals, that we see it in virtually every aspect of what would make a creature whole, we have split ourselves from.
For sure.
Yeah. And so my work, starting wherever someone is lit up, I begin to help them see, grow awareness around that area, and then help them reconnect to it. So some people will begin with diet, others exercise, others nature.
Sure.
You name it. But we
really just trying to hone them back into their own self. Is that?
Well, their authenticity, but you can't be authentic if you've left a part of yourself behind or cut off from it. Mm-hmm. So if we feel that we can function on this planet without being connected to the natural world, I think you'd be hard pressed to prove it.
Yeah.
Not only do you physically manifest the disease that comes from that, right, not being outside, not being around nature, we have a visceral positive reaction when we do those things, and we have the opposite when we are kept from them because that's our home.
Yeah.
That's what we were designed to be around. But I think that when we are lit up and we desire something, like maybe it's dreams that first come up, and that's just really lighting us up then. Yeah. That means a deep part of ourselves, maybe a part of our soul that we have not been listening to.
Yeah.
So helping them rebuild that bridge, that communication, and then consequently that relationship allows them to reclaim a part of them. And same with when, hey, I'm going to have a habit now of going on a walk outside, not using the treadmill inside.
Yeah.
Reclaim that part of who you are. And then when we bring back in each part, we can come from increasingly a place that is increasingly authentic, a place that is increasingly whole. And then suddenly we make choices that are based, in my opinion, from freedom. Because you're not truly making free choices. You're not truly acting in free will if you do not have an informed decision, if you do not come from a place of awareness,
right,
and whole living. So it's really embracing all those. So it's a huge platform because it is reconnecting all of life and very holistic, but I think very critical.
Very necessary right now as we feel so much division and and separation and that innate ability to just know that we are part of nature, that we are nature. You know, we're being so told that we live in our phones and in this transhuman world, and that's not who we are. You know, that's not where our divinity lies. So I appreciate your work, because so many are seeking that reconnection to who they know that they came in as. So thank you for working on all these hearts.
Yeah. Well, it's my passion.
Beautiful.
Yep.
So Julie, you're not from here. So could you tell us why Alpena, what you love about it, what brought you here, a little backstory about how you got here?
Okay. Yes. That's a good question. Yes. So I have been visiting Alpena for about 16, 17 years. My sister and her husband moved here that long ago. And I've been visiting, you know, every summer. And I progressively, over the course of those years, grew to really love the place. It brought me such peace visiting here. It really, food for the soul would be a really good way to put it. And I'm originally from Montana. I was born and raised there. And you'd think, what, coming from Montana? Why don't you just go up into the mountains?
Right.
And that's in part another reason why I'm so impassioned about my work, even in a place as beautiful, as wild and rugged as Montana is, as connected to its environment as Montana at least used to be. I, in my lifetime, have watched a transformation towards the worst in my state. And I have seen it done in a very, very short period of time. So watching that transpire, where not only were they people moving in droves, eating up houses, corporations coming in and just consuming the real estate, jacking up prices, not just in the housing market, but also with food, gas. I mean, you name it, everything is double, right? At least. Watching that entire transformation, and then watching the consequence of that transformation, not only on the environmental world that was such a huge part of Montana, huge part of, you ask any local, if you can find them there anymore, they call us unicorns now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very, where are you from? Oh, I was born and raised here. And they'd be like, what?
You're a unicorn.
Yep.
Wow.
But then you'd watch the impact it had on our natural world and the decimation on our wildlife, on the forests, on our waterways, huge fishing site globally. And that has just been grossly impacted. And then the final nail in the coffin for me was watching my daughter go through school there. And with that kind of gross and very just flippant growth, and it's sort of just consuming greedy growth, you know, there's no thought behind it, would be the best way I can describe it. Just grow for growth's, sake, brings in a tremendous amount of crime. And so we saw the crime skyrocket. We saw it affect the school system. There were bomb threats. I mean, we were a big city suddenly, and we used to be just like Alpena. And so I was like, my daughter's young enough. I'm sorry, I got to go. And so I had a great job, good income, but I still couldn't afford to live there because all the prices were so high. And then I was struggling to live in a place where I felt my daughter was having her childhood ripped away. Yeah. So I said, oh, wait a minute. After I was visiting my sister. And then I was like, why in the heck am I going back? And that was the switch. Wow. So we came out here about almost 3 years ago now.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing that energy and that passion. And, I've talked to you before about how those changes it was Bozeman, right? Mm-hmm. Bozeman, Montana. Yeah. How you've seen affect your community, raise the house prices, the safety issues, everything you just brought up. And one thing you just said was growth for growth's sake. And I think that we're in this mindset of, that's what we're supposed to do. Like, we're just on this trajectory to be bigger, better, best, better, faster now. And we tend to forget what that does to us, what that does to the unicorns, how it pushes them out. And, we're seeing this globally, not just in Bozeman, but, we've seen it happen in Hawaii. We've seen it in California, Oregon. Yep. I mean, so many different places. And I think, that's honestly why I have you on the podcast today, is to just describe what you've seen and maybe how to prevent that and where to take it from here. So thank you for being here in Alpena. And so when we're talking about growth for growth's sake, what are some of the things, since you've been to Alpena, that you adore and love and want to see stay? And then on the contrary, what could be better? What growth could help Alpena? So first, what do you love and know that needs to stay about Alpena?
So of course, the natural elements of Alpena are huge. I think sometimes when we are so used to something, we don't see it for what it is. So I think that the locals, and I'm speaking from experience, growing up in Bozeman, I was surrounded by multiple mountain ranges, beautiful area, and you see it every day, and you just don't see it for what it is.
Right.
That intrinsic beautiful value. So there's that aspect of it that I like to underline in a way that only an outsider, a new person, can really bring clarity to. The clean, beautiful, wild, natural world that Alpena still enjoys, even if it was prevalent all over the world, would still be valuable because it is a huge part of us staying healthy. If our environment is healthy, we are healthy. If our water's healthy, we are healthy. If we're able to go into the woods and hunt and do all these wonderful things and just be out there and enjoy, we are healthy. If we're able to live in that healthy, synergistic, symbiotic relationship, then that in and of itself is a reason to preserve it.
Right.
But to underline that even more, it is not commonplace now. It's tragically unique. So even if you go to national parks, even if you go to recreational areas, they have a paradigm of development because they are under the same philosophical, unspoken rule that I don't even think that we hear out loud, but it's just so pervasive. Develop, consume, build. And it's the only way to bring in enough money. We got to do it or we're not going to survive. We've been sold a lie.
Yeah.
Actually. And I think a lot of us are waking up to that lie. But I think that Alpena is at a crossroads. I think it's at the crux of being either falling in line and being consumed or choosing a different way. And it has the opportunity. It has not been, I know that, DPI was a huge industry and there's a history of that here, but it has not pushed Alpena past the point of no return.
Right.
It's still so beautiful. So I would say that it's the natural world would be a huge one. And then, the additional one that I find comforting almost, but I think is crucial to its survival is its sense of community. I know things are fractured right now. I know things are really hard, but it still has this lifeline of deep community in it, even for people who are very different from one another. And I think it has, room to be, enlivened because things are so stressful right now. But I don't think that that's dead how it is in many, many towns. It's not even there in some towns.
Yeah.
You feel it here. It's the cutest thing. It's awesome. Like there's people that, will just wave, when you walk down the street, or if you're on a mountain, not a mountain trail, but on a wood trail, on a forest trail. I'm so used to mountain, but on a forest trail, they'll wave, they'll say, hey, how you doing? And I remember the shift in Bozeman. And that was my telltale sign that things were too far gone. And I was always taught to wave on the road. I was always taught to say, hey, how you doing when you pass somebody, make eye contact. It's good manners, right? And I remember people, I would say, hey, how you doing on a trail about 2 miles in, whatever. And they just look at you in the face and they'd hear you. Nothing's in their ears. And they'd look right through you. And it was creepy. But it's because they're coming from a place where that's probably unsafe to do.
Yeah.
But they're bringing that attitude instead of community. They're bringing that dissection, that disconnect.
Yeah.
And Alpena doesn't have it yet. And that made my heart feel like, oh, we could build a life here.
Well, and that's that sense of safety where you wanted to bring your daughter. And I feel you heavy there because, I've traveled all over too, and I've been to lots of different places. And as I feel the shift in the environment of the world in general, I've found myself really latching on to this sense of community too and saying, okay, where on the planet would I rather be? And then going, well, people know me most here, and they still have that thread of love and authenticity and genuine care for each other. And I definitely see that dying all over the planet. And we even see it in in tribes, in other, cultures that like where, that disconnect, that phone was given to them, that internet, that whatever was placed in front of them, or, in our case, we gave them casinos and alcohol, and, we destroyed that sense of community that I think that we're talking about the same thing that would be wonderful to rebuild. So
Right.
in knowing that that's a chance that it can go away, what do you see that we could do to help, strengthen that? And, because we said that there needs to be a little bit of economy built on it, and we're trying to transition from, say, the logging industry and the industrial industry part of Alpena, we're transitioning. What do you think would help keep an economy and not break that structure of community?
Right. I mean, I think that that's first and foremost, that's the big question, right? And I think it takes a lot of creativity, and I think it takes a lot of conversation to have it. But in order to even get to that big question, we have to have a shift in our thinking, a shift in our approach. So I think that the first thing that we need to do is begin the discussion around a shift of, I don't want to say attitudinal shift, but worldview shift, but basically embracing teach a man to fish. Embracing that no matter what structure at the federal level we end up with through all these changes, that a centralized community is what we have been missing for now the better part of this country's history.
Yeah.
Since this country has begun, we had small communities, and then we branched out. And every time we would try to give a right to someone, we were trying to, which I think was the intention, like you look at schooling. We're giving them the right to have an education,
right,
which is huge, right?
Yeah.
Doing that on such a large scale is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And so how can we sync up where we have these overarching rights, but we run them from the centralized level? And I'm not saying that everything has to be in sync. I'm not saying anything along those lines, but I am saying that how do we do that on a community basis where everyone is able to fill in the gaps, to have the rights necessary to exist and survive and thrive, and do it on a level that makes sense for each individual space, And that's it's a hard one to ask, but we have to have that shift from, nope, it has to be done at federal. And we also have to have the shift that, nope, I just need to do it solo. Yep. And we have to shift away from the extremes.
Right.
And that's what I hear a lot from people is the extremes. Oh, no, we have to have it just at the federal level. No, it just has to be this way. And then I hear the other extremes. Nope, I want nothing on the federal level. I want nobody telling me what to do. I just do it solo. And I know that's very politically charged, but it's relevant to the conversation of how to build community. Because at the core of building community is taking each individual person and embracing them, helping them thrive while simultaneously thriving ourselves. And that takes a relationship, a back and forth, right? So it can't be just solo, and it can't just be at this large removed layer. It has to be done right here.
Yeah.
So there's that attitudinal part of it that I think is super crucial. But then there's detailed steps to it as well. So you have the attitudinal one, and then you have the next one, which gets more detailed, which is like, well, how do we implement it? I don't even think you can get to how we can implement it until you do one more thing, and that is open up safe communication. And until people start talking where they can say something like, no, I just want to do it solo, to a room of people that may not agree and feel safe saying that and be able to puzzle through that concept as a concept instead of an identity, we cannot move forward. So I think it truly just requires those two foundations before we even get to the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
The foundation of shifting from extremes and building a community in a way that we maybe have never seen in the modern world yet. And really, really embracing the notion of constructive communication. We aren't these political ideas.
No.
That's not who we are. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a libertarian. I am an individual who wants to talk about that idea there, that idea about finance. I'm an individual who I want to talk about food sourcing. I don't care what it is, but to take our identities and make them the truly holistic, massive things that they are. It's our whole lives. It's all the experiences that we have. It's the things that we love, the things that we don't love. All of that, that's who we are. We aren't these labels.
Correct.
And you can't walk into healthy communication until you realize that. Because if you do feel like your identity is enmeshed into these topics and don't treat them as true issues and topics instead, but that they are who you are, you don't puzzle through that idea anymore. You just defend the one version of the idea.
Yeah.
So attitude and communication, I think, are the first huge things. And then we can talk details.
So, I mean, essentially you're saying when I'm like, well, how do we build an economy and how do we become more who we want to be when we look at the world and how it's shifting and all that, you're more talking just that, self-reliance, self-efficiency, being able to maintain when shit hits the fan, if it is.
Well, I'm a huge proponent of those things. Like, I don't believe that it is good for the environment. I don't believe, and what's good for the environment is good for us, in my opinion. You see it time and time again with products, with structure, with what have you. I don't even think we can make those decisions until we're able to have conversations. And we can't make conversations until we shift our goals to that. And that requires the attitude shift and the communication.
Yeah. How do we convince a community, to see the value in that?
Right. I personally think that hopefully, I wish it could be through just words. I wish I could go up to someone, because I was having this discussion with people prior to me even opening and building Rewildings, because I think it's so crucial to our health to be self-sufficient and to have community. Both those. It has to be symbiotic and it has to be like complement one another. But I think that the current world is forcing people to have no other choice. We are in times where, even though I think that my rationale for having that discussion is strong, doesn't matter. We are in such uncertain times that to bank on hoping that a unstable federal government is somehow, and world is somehow going to make sure that we're okay is naive.
I think we're being shown that nobody's got our back besides ourselves.
Right.
And I
don't think that's out of malice. I think everything's just on fire right now.
For sure.
Yeah. Not that you were saying that. I was just thinking out loud.
No, part of this podcast and this understanding of what I'm trying to bring to the table of Alpena is that community, that collaboration, and that communication. And I just think that those three things go hand in hand for longevity.
Yeah.
And
even under the best of circumstances, it's the way to go.
Right. And we're so far removed from it. But yet, we have our technology that is making us global, and we can understand, we're using cameras right now to stay connected and help each other know the now moment, but we're using it in such a way that's not in a good communicative way or in a collaboration way. It's being really driven to divide us. And so, I love how you're saying, that the whole understanding of it has to change first. And it scares me in a sense, because it makes me think that something has to happen to change that mindset.
And it is scary, because if you think, at least from my personal experience, my individual path, and then the many people that I've worked with over the years, most of the time you have to go through what is called the dark night of the soul.
Right.
Some sort of traumatic experience in order to shift. The collective, large groups of people really are no different.
Right.
You have to have a very, very clear wake-up call that cannot be ignored to shift attitudes. And I don't think it always has to be that way, but the vast majority of the time it does. And especially when one is, talking about it on the group level. And then, but once that happens, and I think that can happen, and it can happen where it's not in fear, but in being realistic and aware of reality, in awareness instead of fear-based. And it seems like a nuanced distinction, but it's very important. Fear is not empowering.
No.
Awareness is.
Right.
And so I think we can do that in that way. And we can say, even under the best of circumstances, like you're saying, community, cooperation, communication, that could be our mantra. I mean, it really hits at home towards rebuilding a life way here that learns from the past and doesn't force people into a cog-like industrial sort of mechanism, right? Tyrannical sort of modern world. That being said, without doing that, without shifting people's minds, and without the education and awareness and the shout outs and the, hey, this is what's going on, we won't have the opportunity for those discussions. And the discussions really bring the meat and potatoes, because not you or I can come up with a solution solo. There are so many smart people here. So many people that bring in just brilliant ideas that if they can be on board with that foundation of shifting to, centralized community and shifting to constructive communication, just those two things, and we could have growing discussions around them. We could bring the smarts from over here, the brilliant idea from over here, here, and then we can start working on the details. Okay, well, what do we do with water? What do we do where I can be self-reliant in an urban environment for food? How can I do that with medicine? And then we create a more self-reliant community. And that, again, is where self-reliance individually and community are grown together.
Yeah.
That we're not a bunch of solo artists, because that just doesn't work.
And I would imagine that you would agree that educating ourselves about the importance behind this, and like seeing beyond the veil, like
yes,
before tragedy has to strike. And I'm not a doomsday or anything like that, but I mean, we understand that it doesn't feel the same right now. And like, when we feel that in the air, we shouldn't just keep trudging forward like we're going to be okay, everything's good, the government's got our back, checks in the mail, whatever. Is it? I don't know. Like, I would rather know that I have a food plot growing and that I have safe water to drink, and you can
go to your neighbor if some emergency transpired, and that's honestly what without that, you can see it. So I think like there's a couple things to that. One, you can see how we have depressed, how we have exhausted our workforces, our sort of larger framework workforces, because we're asking them to do too much and we haven't created community. Yeah. So you take the police, for example. The police are asked to be everything. The police are asked to be mental health crises intervention, violence intervention. They're supposed to make sure that all of the code is upkept in the community. I mean, we ask them to be virtually everything, and no one can do that.
No.
And so if we keep pawning off all of these things onto, oh, you're the police, you do this, or you're the doctor, you should know everything, or you're this, you should have everything cleaned up really nice. And it's kind of a weird reverse entitlement. I get this. You do that, right? And so we have to have these deep discussions around some of that, but we're also already in the status quo. Even if the world wasn't in difficulty right now, we should already be aware of how taxing it is on these institutions. We are taxing them.
Absolutely.
So that's the first one.
Having a little compassion and empathy for these people. Like,
oh my gosh. Too much.
I was just talking to the sheriff the other day, and they literally have 10 guys out.
Too much.
To 10 guys that drive around and patrol this whole town.
Yeah, I'm saying they deal with too much is what I mean.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, and then, we have people like giving them grief because they can't do this or they didn't do that. And it's like...
And they have to move along super fast. You got to get that done quickly because you got the next call, or you have to be moving along and patrolling over here. Or, I mean, it's too much.
And it's not just the police. It's in our education. It's our doctors. Yep. It's everything that you just said.
Ask your teacher, and the teacher needs to be able to socialize them. They need to be able to educate them. We are asking our institutions too much. And that's a part of the dysfunction of the conversation that we're having.
Absolutely.
Back to communication, is that we are taking zero responsibility for the burden we are putting on the institution
Absolutely.
We are unhappy with.
Absolutely.
It's like yelling at our parents for not giving us everything we wanted. I kind of think that way.
Right.
It's a little bit too much entitlement.
Yeah.
I want my teachers to be able to talk about sex education or not, or talk about all of these things, but this particular history or not. And and also socialize you, but make sure that Billy doesn't do it. It's too much.
It's so much.
It's so much. And so really getting back to the idea that communication, at the heart of communication, we could be talking about a lot of these things, rights versus responsibilities, and that they shouldn't be versus, they should go hand in hand. Whenever you talk about a right, you better talk about a responsibility. Yeah. But even that, if people don't align with it, right, we should be discussing it. Wouldn't it be nice to discuss it without people saying, oh, well, you're a right winger or you're, no. And that's why they're fun. Those two things, that shift in paradigm, shift in goal, and communication are just crucial. But anyway, kind of back to what you were saying is just like, how do we get to talk to those points, those details, right? And one of them is having that reflection that we don't need to hit critical mass. We have seen a century of how burdensome the structure is on these institutions, and it's not working. Yeah. So the proof, we don't need to hit critical mass to know that we have to shift to a different paradigm. Yes. The second one is that it's something that we are all painfully missing. So like, even if we were introducing toxic things to people like phones, like internet, like too much of those things, I'm not trying to villainize them, they wouldn't be as toxic if they weren't filling a deep need. So if we didn't crave connection, didn't crave this outlet, didn't crave something that fills the void, whatever the void is for, whatever you're using, it would not have the degree of control it does have. But that tells me when people are online all the time, they're not only getting addicted to the doom scroll effect and whatnot, but they are in desperate need of connection.
Absolutely.
At the community person level. And they are not getting it, and so they'll go and seek it more and more. So again, more proof in the pudding that we need these things. We are crying out, just not in obvious ways, that we need our community again. We need to fill this life again with our own authenticity instead of living through others. And by that, I mean, back to the self-reliance, like, even though it's great to think that X, Y, and Z is all going to be taken care of by social structure, we lose a part of our commitment to this life. We lose a part of
our own divinity, our own chance to...
We didn't get to build it ourselves. Our own chance to kind of like manifest and do. So what's the line? We're totally solo and there's no government and there's no community, even on the, next door level. No, it's got to be something we learn from all of this. Back to community, learn from all this that has not been working for a long time, and take back your claim on this life. Grow your own freaking food. You don't have to worry if there's non-GMO or if they're spraying pesticides on it, because it's yours. Right. I can go on and on about that.
Yeah, no, so just sorry. To point out two things that you said that were educational pieces that really needed to be, I just want to clarify. You just said like, basically having a sense of compassion for what you're seeing out there and how much everybody is just at their wits' end. Like if you're in it, you're in it. Yeah. And if you're trying, that means you're probably stressed out and that you're in it. There's a chance you're in fight or flight rather than ease mode right now. Mm-hmm. And so, approaching your child's teacher or having to call in to your chief of police or whoever, whatever you got to check in with, starting with that sense of compassion, like they're already stressed. Right. Why don't you ask them how their day is going before you start criticizing what they're doing wrong, So just that educational piece of just coming from the heart rather than what you're frustrated. They're probably frustrated too. Yeah. So let's meet there in compassion. And then secondly, you said, doom scrolling and this connection and trying to seek and finding out how many people have liked their post and that sort of thing. Clearly, you are dying for some community. Yeah. Yeah. You are asking for it. And just remember that the community is right here, Mm-hmm. And we really need to be careful about how much we're going online looking for that sense of community. Is that really community, or is it just... To me, that's more of a sense of communication. Like, hey, I'm here. I miss you. I love you. Life is beautiful. I can't wait to see you in person. Right. We live across the country. So when is it? It's going to be 6 months, 2 years till I see you again. Okay, cool. At least we have this way of communicating, you know, and it should just be that, a communication, not like, hey, my uncle in Texas did not like my video. Why did he not, you know, like, or whatever it is. But it just seeking that sense of just understanding that you are seeking community, and maybe you use that as a different avenue to like go out and create it somehow. So let's use that as a transition into like, what are some practices that you think that the community could start to have in like group discussions or different ways to start to set up this self-reliance through smaller groups or education? Or what are some of the ways that you think that we could start the conversation?
Right. Well, and I think that educating them, and I guess that's what I should have worded a little bit more clearly. I get so impassioned, I get caught up with stuff. But educating people about the whys behind where we're at. And that kind of takes us a little bit away from having to need the trauma to teach us or to open our minds, that we have to be at critical mass in order to consider these things.
Right.
And so that we teach or educate or open up conversation around, hey, these problems have been for a long time. And that's kind of why I brought up the police example, is like, we have these institutions that we are just so heavily weighing on. We are so heavily using them as crutches. And not to say there isn't place for them, but I'm just saying that would be a part of the discussion. This has been happening for a long time. First part of the education. Second part of the education would be saying, talking about filling voids through the use of, you name it, food, toxic food, technology. I mean, there's so many vices out there right now, and anything can really be turned into a vice if someone is in need. And then talking about the deep need there. What are you filling? So really creating conversation around those things, I think, is the first step. But sometimes people, and especially in a culture that is so dissected from emotion, so dissected from reflecting inward, which we are. And there are other cultures. I don't want to alienate ours. We're just a really good example. Sometimes doing it around activity is awesome. And we will bring people together when we start to do things like, okay, fine, you guys don't want to have the deep conversation right now. That's fine. Let's work on how we can bring fresh, individually filtered water to each house in Alpena. You'll draw all sorts of people in through the activity, and then the discussion can transpire. But maintaining clear boundaries around mutual respect is huge. And maybe the discussion can come up, or the opportunity, like, okay, guys, let's tackle the water first. Let's do this, 2-hour tutorial, bring in your ideas, we'll fine tune it, bring it next level the next time that we meet. And afterwards, we're going to meet and talk about why we're even here for this activity. Right. These are the parameters for safe and effective communication. And if you don't abide by them, then, we'll reset you a little bit. And if that doesn't work, we'll ask you to leave. And I know that sounds harsh, but with how volatile some people can get, you kind of need boundaries.
Yeah, and I mean, you're bringing up a great point. So when I said I found myself wanting to stay in Alpena and to keep that sense of community, running the Fresh Palette for 15 years and seeing what the community does and how they help each other and raise money and pay attention and have empathy and compassion and love and all these things. Like, I really don't think that Alpena itself is that far from understanding that their self-reliance is already there, that their ability to take care of each other is already there.
It just needs to be organized.
It just needs to be organized and like really told to them, you're already doing it. You're there, you've been doing it and you care and you honestly do love your neighbor, even if you don't agree with the political sign in their front yard. If their house was on fire, you'd be in there getting them out, or some sense of love and wanting to make sure that they are okay is already innate.
Well, and I think that speaks to an additional layer of mature awareness where we see things as they are, right? And I mean more towards how we are being divided as a country, as a people, and that how sometimes the best way to address something like that isn't to be like, oh, we're being divided. Don't you see we're being divided? But to just flip the script and just be like, you know what? Actually, we're an awesome community. No, actually, we're really loving. No, actually, I have a Muslim neighbor and I'm just fine with it, or whatever you have.
Yeah.
And start flipping the script to, because the more you tell someone, anyone, anything, on some level, they'll buy it. If you tell a person that they're dumb every day, and they could be a rocket scientist, eventually you will erode them a little bit. But if you tell them that they're brilliant every day, they're going to shine after a while. And it's really no different with that type of message. Oh, we're divided. We hate each other. They're over there. That's over there. Okay, you keep telling that message. I'm going to shout louder a totally different one that I actually, and what I'm hearing from you, is that is more alignment with reality. And that is, we already are a loving community.
And, flipping the script, like you said, it made me think like, wow, I'd love to come up with a slogan for Alpena that I want to see signs in people's front yards that are like, we are Alpena, or Alpena strong, or come here because we love you, like just this. And we really do need to start changing that conversation, flipping that script and just saying, instead of focusing on what we are not trying to become, focus on what we already are.
Sure. Yeah.
And bring that to the surface and really just
That's
remind
very
each
empowering.
other. Yeah. Because negative energy or positive energy, it's still energy. It's going to go whichever way,
Right.
And I always say, like, whether you're hating on me or loving on me, it's still energy, so I'll take it. You know what I mean? But I have to channel that energy through in a different way. And so when we think about that in a community mindset, like, instead of seeing the division, let's empower the connection. Let's go deeper into what we already are, and then see where we can take it from that. For me, Northeastern Michigan in general is a hidden gem. And we have, as Alpena Strong or Northeastern Michigan Strong, held off all of this development. And I'm just afraid that it's inevitable. Like you're saying, vulnerability is there in Bozeman, in Alpena, in anywhere on the planet at this point. It is a vulnerable space. And I think that what this conversation with you is to help, like, understand, like, how do we use self-reliance and our resilience to protecting nature to keep our authenticity, to keep what we know that we love and cherish about this space and time. Because all of the rest of Lower Michigan, it doesn't look like it looks over here in Northeastern Michigan.
Yep.
Light pollution, development, box stores, everything, And I'm so happy they never built an expressway over this way.
Yeah, it's been a saving grace till this point.
For sure. And that they're always touting, well, we can do this, we can do that, we can build. And it's like, no. And the community is beautiful in the sense that they've always said, we don't want. But lately, I've been hearing, more like, well, I own the Chisholm Street Big Boy building, and people are just talking like, bring in a Red Lobster, bring in another box garbage, And I'm like, you're talking to the fresh palate guy, asking me to bring in this nasty whatever, but that's not, is that really what you want?
No, I don't.
At the core of it, I don't think that's what you want. You're saying that because the one time this year you want to go to Red Lobster, go drive to Saginaw or wherever the closest one is, like, just do that, make it a day trip, But don't change your community because of that idea of what you think you want. Really go to the core of what you're trying to say here.
Well, and I think that they would have a better sense of it if the identity of Alpena was enlivened. And the identity of Alpena being community, love of community, love of the natural world, and strong self-reliance. If they knew that, they could embody it in those choices, but they aren't being told that. They're being told a bunch of messages, not even from Alpena. They're being told messages from corporations that are faceless. This meal is awesome. These jeans are fantastic. You're very, good looking if you're wearing X, Y, and Z. I don't care. But they're being bombarded with these messages, and on the same vein as flipping the script with the negativity, it would really benefit Alpena to grow, to strengthen its own identity, because then when it is pressed upon, which it will be,
Yes.
by
I'm
those,
feeling it.
by the locusts, by massive companies that will come in and gobble you up and kill all of your mom and pop stores and thus your community. They're waiting. They're, just little, not even little predators, just kind of looming. But you can see it more clearly if your own identity is strong. You'll see it on an individual level, you see it on a collective level. If the individual identity is strong, it can undergo those transformations, those challenges. But if a person or community is weak in who they are, they cannot stave off those attacks. Yeah. So it seems suddenly like a really good idea to have a red lobster 10 years later, and you're wondering why there's no mom and pops. But you couldn't see it for what it was because your own identity wasn't strong. So flipping the script again. Yeah. Alpena strong, and Alpena strong means X, Y, and Z.
Right. And one word that you left out of that community that I want to just bring in is safety.
Yeah.
What we're all really searching for in our heart centers is that sense of safety. This is what the name Harbor Spaces is meant for. It's to harbor that space of safety. And it's meant, obviously, because we live on the harbor and we love our space, but it's a sense of safety. And community is that safety. Knowing where your food comes from is that safety.
It really is.
Knowing that your water is not contaminated is safety.
Yep.
Knowing that your neighbor's got your back is safety. All of that creates a space within you that allows you to stay out of that fight or flight mode into your heart center, where all of your energy should be taking place, not in fight or flight, freaking out, wondering what's going to happen in life.
Yeah.
And so I just really find that, again, education and understanding that when we really look inside ourselves of what we're looking for, it is that self-reliance. It is all those things. It's never that box thing, and it's never that outside source that you think is there for you. It's never been that.
Right.
You've been taught that. You've been told that that's what you want.
Yep.
And when you said they're on the predators on the outside, I just think about the lion just waiting there, just waiting to pounce.
Yep.
As soon as there's that weak moment.
It's exactly what happens. Yep. And people are thinking, oh no, but it'll be a good idea because they aren't strong in themselves. But it would be, I don't think it's that huge of a challenge to strengthen that identity of Alpena again, where it has been weakened by predatorial forces. And I don't mean to, again, be fear-mongering, because I am much more about just being aware that, predators are necessary in the world. It's a fact of life. Do we have to construct our culture that way? No. But learning that the world is a certain way right now, whether it has to stay that way or not, whether we created it that way or not, is sort of irrelevant. And that's an aspect of maturity. It is that way. We live in an environment where we prey upon each other. We don't need to be that way. And by that, I mean stores coming in and eating up the resources here. And that'll happen. Watch, you see these box stores closing up right now. They're leaving because they can't consume more here. They have no loyalty to this area like a mom and pop would. And that's what you'll see as you get more and more of those types of, I don't want to call them businesses. Locusts would be a better way of putting it.
Yeah. Another thing you brought up was basically the vision of Alpena. So when we're talking about, becoming self-reliant and all that, I believe that Alpena stands at the precipice right now of its own change, its own development into what it wants to become, because we've moved from the logging industry. We went into manufacturing and that sort of thing. And we're almost looking for what our next venture is. And I kept saying, it should be tourism. We should preserve what we have, and we should, draw outside money into our community to help our economy grow, but not develop more. Mm-hmm. Bring the money in and then you guys go home, kind of in a sense. But really, that's just about the vision for what we want it to become. And I think we just stand at this very open and available chance for us to write the script for ourselves, just like what was supposed to happen to us during COVID, when we all had to go inside and decide if this life was exactly the way we wanted it to, or it was time to pivot.
Yep.
So and I think Alpena has just hit that point too, where it's oh, we can be whatever we want right now. What do we want to be?
Right. And it's actually exciting. Even though this is a negative time in the world, it's really kind of cool to be at a transformation point.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And I've seen more people like yourself moving into the community saying they already feel this sense of what that is. And so I a lot of what Harbor Spaces is to allow that authentic voice to come out so we can each talk about what does the vision look like? Because it's not just an individual vision. This is a community vision. And then I even want to go bigger to like Northeastern Michigan in general. And then I want to go to Michigan and the Great Lakes. And then I just, remember, we're all connected fully, but like start in your heart center, move to your community, your family, then your community, expand out, keep expanding out. And where do you feel safe? And what does that vision look like? And where do you want to really put your effort and energy into? And I guarantee you don't want to be spending your money at your box stores. You don't want to be giving it away to corporations. You want to keep it as local as possible. And again, that educational piece of me owning a business here, you owning a business here, and knowing like what that takes and how much, you can get something cheaper at a different place, but where is that money going after you spend it? Right. Does it circulate back into your school system? Does it go to your downtown? Does it go?
Right.
Where does it go? Does it stay in the taxes? Does it stay in the infrastructure? Really start to think about when you give that money over, where is it? Is it coming back? Is it looping or is it leaving?
Right. Well,
go give it to Walmart and tell me that it's staying anywhere around here.
Well, and that's a part of the communication and the education aspect of this hopefully growing conversation and around circular economy, around community center, around making your money stay in your community, helping your money stay in your community. And that it's also not just about money, because people really forget that one. And they think, well, yeah, it is. That's a naive way. There's all that negative, also brainwashed response. It's a very knee-jerk, brainwashed response, the same coming from the same place that says develop, 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 and that we have to wake up from. That being said, there's a handful of things, even outside of, you don't need to know anything about circular economy to begin helping your community.
Right.
You can pay with cash. You can only shop at mom and pop stores. You can only buy natural stuff. And when I start to list these things off, it ends up being the stuff that's healthiest for you too.
Yeah.
So it's hilarious. So when I say buying natural stuff, I'm talking down to your clothing. Most of the time you can get that like at the fair. I go to it every year, and it's a group of folks that come in with their own, wares that they sew and whatnot. And I just spacing the name of it. But buying your clothes there's also a place in Traverse City where they make all their own clothes. But the point being there, most of the time when we buy at these box stores, whether it's food, clothing, stuff for your home, it's toxic. Right. So when you buy local, a lot of the time you're going to buy cleaner. Whether it's food, whether it's stuff for the kitchen, doesn't matter. 99% of the time, buying local will not only help your economy, it will make you healthier. So it's all good for everyone.
Not to mention how much healthier it makes the globe.
I know, and so then you're not trekking stuff halfway. I mean, it's hilarious that the smallest of things has such a big effect.
Right.
But it does. But there's also, that's something that we can easily, as a community, come together with and have that be our list of goals is like, I don't need as much stuff. That's another part of the brainwashing.
Yeah.
I don't need to buy X, Y, and Z. It's completely synthetic and actually will give me cancer within the next 10 years. Shove that aside. And get a list of things that you maybe don't need to shift your thinking into a list of things that you can do that are beneficial. I'll buy local. I'll buy with cash. I will make sure that I'm supporting this new entrepreneur. So like that was another thing I was going to say that could be an awesome part of what are our next steps? How can we make this happen? Great concepts. The two things that come to mind first and foremost, well, three things is one, the preservation of the natural world that you have. Guard it like a hawk. Sure. It is a jewel, it's a gem, and for all the reasons I said before, it needs to be protected. The second one is co-ops. I mean so for example, we have a grocery store back home and it is owned by the community. It's owned by the employees that work there. It is not owned by one bigwig who never gets to go in and do stuff. So start forming businesses that are employee owned. Yeah. If you want to make sure people have jobs, give them a job that isn't slave based. Give them a job where it isn't a boss, but it is between equals.
Yeah.
Give them something they own. And that's something that is sustainable and thriving. So cooperatives are awesome for that. And, employee-owned businesses and cooperatives. And then the third one is help people that want to do this stuff locally get their businesses off the ground. You have somebody who wants just a local small grocer, help that happen. Get the freaking, something on, what is it where you go online and you can ask for funding,
GoFundMe.
Yeah, start a freaking GoFundMe for Joe Schmo who wants a local grocer and it's just a small little grocer. Done. Somebody else wants to do glass recycling. Done. That would be awesome for, low environmental impact, desperately needed.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go on and on, but local entrepreneurs to support, employee owned, and saving your environment, those would be the three crucial bedrocks that would help us as action points to walk in.
Absolutely. I mean, you're really just talking about being a conscious community.
Yeah.
Consciously being aware of what you're doing and where your efforts, your energy, your money, your time, everything is being spent. And, something that I was naive about when I was younger and deciding to be an entrepreneur was that I believed that the American dream was still alive and well.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate that I got slapped across the face to understand that that wasn't the thing.
Mm.
And so in my world somewhere of being a conscious community, I believe that reigniting that idea of the American dream, or being able to have your own business and raise your kids with just that business and still make it to their sports games and still go on vacation, and still retire from that local grocer or that restaurant that you own or that shoe shop or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really think that is, again, getting back to self-reliance is, Johnny's got the shoe store, so we go there for the shoes, and we don't order it off Amazon, and I don't go to Famous Footwear.
Mm-hmm.
Just go for the mad dash at school shopping day for that cool ass thing.
Mm-hmm.
When John's got it, it's just $4 more.
Right.
Like,
if you think about it, a lot of the time when you buy through big box stores, they're crap anyhow. So you end up buying like 5 shoes to your 2 shoes that you would be buying if you're buying, say locally. Most of the time when you buy locally, like, again, it's better quality. So buy 2 that are better quality and don't have 5 pieces of garbage in your closet.
Please. And I mean, if you really think that the image is something, just to bring it up, that's being mass produced. You're not being an individual by going and getting those cool Nikes.
No.
It'd be much cooler to buy again from Johnny, who just made that shoe, and it's yours, and there's only that pair.
Yeah.
Wear that with pride and understand what that really means.
Yeah, and that you aren't your clothes. And again, back to the identity. But I think that, at the end of the day, the really helping people reboot what is a priority, and that we have these subconscious priorities that we've been fed, and they really aren't true to, I think, us as a species, us as people, but also this community particularly, because when you walk in this community, you do not feel that they might flippantly say, I want a Red Lobster or something like that, but at the core of how they act is not in harmony with that. At the core of how they act is like, hey, how you doing? What do you need? Oh, and they'll stop and talk to you. And somebody's store closed early because there was an emergency. They put a sign on the door and they say, oh, geez, that's too bad. And instead of stomping their feet and feeling entitled that they weren't able to go in. That's not the vibe here. The vibe here is the care. So that tells me that there's space for that to be enlivened. And that's our first steps as a community, is doing that for each other. And then here's helpful hints that will counter the brainwashing we've all undergone.
Right.
Buy local, buy in cash.
Well, also knowing that the food that you're eating is doling you out. Not just the media, who knows what they're spraying in the air, who knows what they're spraying on your food. I mean, you can educate yourself quite quickly to figure out that
it's no bueno.
All this is to keep you lethargic and not thinking.
Yeah.
And so, again, being self-reliant, knowing where that food and water is coming from, to start with this energetic being that you are, to be able to make the right choices and to see that that's what you're actually looking for and not being told what you're looking for.
Yep.
And I just wanted to point out, that we are at that crux where and I'm using you as an example, seeing your own community in Bozeman shift. And we can quite possibly be at that same shifting point if we're not willing to wake up to the idea that it's in our hands right now and we need to come together now.
And that's where the empowerment comes in. That's where the awareness comes in. That's where the tools towards communication comes in. That there is that choice, you guys. This area is not past the point of no return.
Correct.
But there has to be there is opportunity to do it from a place of awareness instead of fear, like I said before. And also where we aren't putting our heads in the sand, hoping someone will save us. And also not from the victim mentality. Because that'd be easy to do right now.
For sure.
It'd be so easy for us to be like, oh, well, we're fed this garbage. We're fed this. How can we do it? It's everything in our lives. It's totally overwhelming because these corporations have been allowed to do X, Y, and Z. You know what? You're right. Too bad. We got dealt a hard set of, cards. That's what we got to play. And so just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You got people behind you. We're here together and we're going to do it.
Yeah.
But it would be so easy to be like, it's insurmountable. And I don't believe it is. And I think that Alpena has so much potential. And I don't mean that in a developmental sense, but more in the sense of allowing its citizens, every single one of them, irrelevant of what's in their bank account, to thrive.
Absolutely.
To be super healthy, happy people. I really think it has the capacity to do that. And to do that in the US, that'd be pretty amazing to show the rest of the country. Saying, nope, even in this toxic environment, we're able to carve out a healthy community for each other.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I've traveled around the planet, and I know that the planet, the globe, the people of the earth are still looking to the United States to get their shit together and show us the way it's supposed to happen, And sometimes I'm, in another country, and I'm like, you think that shit show over there is something that you want, but here we are saying, like, no, we can still do this, And I think that's why I'm so adamant about, like, really getting this message out about, like, hey, it is choice point right now.
Yep, absolutely.
Are you in? You out?
Mm-hmm.
Are you feeling overwhelmed? Because you shouldn't. You have a whole community behind you. Mm-hmm. It's not your job to change everything, and you can only do your part. And number one, get yourself grounded. Get yourself in your heart space. Get out of fear. Eat some healthy food. Go for a walk.
Yeah.
See the beauty around you all the time. I mean, I do these little videos where I'm jumping in the water and just showing people, like, it's ice cold and it's crazy, but it's beautiful.
Yes.
It's beauty everywhere. It's in the eye of the beholder. Like, what is it? Yeah. Is that water cold? Does it sting? Yes. Am I freezing when I'm out? Yes. But at the same time, how much more beautiful does the world look when you're maybe that much closer to death, right? Like, right. It just starts to zing. And so...
Well, and that's participating instead of eating life and just getting out there and making it your life, claiming your life, versus what we have moved into in present day, which is not a lot of claiming our own lives. We give most of our lives to an employer. We have our food and stuff shipped to us. We don't, most of the time they'll eat at a Burger King or a McDonald's and they have no idea, like, what goes into killing an animal. Right. We're so far removed from reality, but to do that would require people to claim their reality, and it's scary, but it's the maturing that we need to do and is required of our survival. And it's also the biggest, bestest work ever, because then when they smile after doing that work, they are smiling from a place of knowing what they're made of, knowing who they are, not being shells of themselves and wondering just what they would have bloomed into and if it was ever worthwhile. It's like the oak tree seeing the acorn and smiling.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. It takes a damn lot of work to grow into an oak tree, though. And I think that that's what kind of, on a subconscious level, scares people. But it's beautiful. And it's the only work that's worth anything.
Absolutely.
Is to see who we're supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, starts a good conversation towards the right initiative. And I know that both of us are working in our own ways to help educate and bring that awareness to this community, along with so many other people. And give credit where it's due. There are so many good hearts and good people working behind the scenes right now to create that same vision that we're talking about. And I want more of them on this podcast. I want more little groups started. I want more awareness brought to this idea. But I think this is a good jump off point to let the community know who you are, what we see as beneficial. And I think what most people know in their hearts that they would rather be giving their energy to as well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's been so many shifts, and we know that there's going to be so many more in the next few years. And that sense of safety, you know, I really want to see generated within yourself and then again within our community, so that we can start to just shine as we are. Alpena strong. I mean, I like it. I think it's beautiful. To kind of wrap things up, I would like to maybe, I know we don't have, there's a sense of disconnect into generations ahead of us. So I have this question about, what does it look like 7 generations in Northeastern Michigan or in Alpena in general? And so I know that's a very hard concept when we don't know what next year or next week looks like at these points.
Right.
But in a space and time that you get to vision 50 years from now, what do you see Alpena look like? How do you see it? What would you like to see it grow into?
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that when anybody has their own vision, you know, I'm a huge proponent of it has to, when it's brought into action, it has to bring in a bunch of other ideas. But if I was the only decision-making party on the planet, we're waving our magical wand, I would hope that it has lusher public access forests that are properly maintained and that are allowed to be wild, that they are preserved and actually grown larger. I would hope that our waters are clean and well taken care of, that we are stewards of our natural world so that it is better and better than it has ever been. Whether it's invasive species, whether it's garbage that you see coming up, that we would have tackled that and that we would have not only preserved it, but strengthened our environment. I would also hope to see that we don't sprawl in our growth. If we do have a tremendous amount of growth, I would hope we don't. I would hope that we have intelligent growth and that we would not be sprawling, but having more dense cities. And that doesn't mean being on top of each other, enough space to be healthy and happy, but not where we take up our natural world in, like I said, that all-consuming sprawling way. And that we wouldn't create these urban deserts that we so commonly do in the Western world, where people are just scrunched together and don't have enough healthy space. They also have no parks. They have no access to groceries, but they're in the middle of really, really awful urban environment. I would hope that here, what we do instead is that we have corner grocers, that we have so many parks per block, that we have easy access for bikes and that like the bike path and whatnot. I feel that that's crucial for independence. Kind of sounds funny, but it's the one form of transportation that does not make us reliable on the dollar.
Right.
We can bike ourselves. And I'm a huge proponent of independence and freedom. And at the core of independence and freedom means that in a dense urban environment, you have the room to have a garden, possibly chickens, that you know how to take care of it all. You can filter all of your own water, that we are independently stable. That's what I would hope, is that a very, very self-sufficient community that has a ton of employee-owned businesses, mom and pops, and we don't have any box stores. Wouldn't that be just rad?
Absolutely.
Oh, and then the last wish I would just throw in there is that we would, as a part of that environmental stewardship, I would really, really like to see that it be a city-based dark sky preserve.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. And ironically, you would have to be beating people off with a stick if you created that environment. People would be like, can I be there? Can I be there?
Right.
Because it would be so lovely to live there. On an individual basis, on a community basis, it would be sought after. I think it would be right now, let alone in 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're here. Right?
Yep, exactly, yeah.
So preservation and also... Preservation's like major.
Yeah, and then self-sufficiency and then intelligent growth. And then, like I said, the community-based stuff that I can't emphasize enough, the employee-based businesses And we're so sucked into thinking that I have to have a job through this employer. Why people aren't asking, I mean, that's just, like I said, that is residual from the slave industry. Whether you're white, brown, black, I don't care. When you're working under an employer, and I don't say that in a mean way because I've employed people myself, it is a trickle-down effect. Yeah. And we've all learned that does not work. Right. Trickle-down effect my ass. If you need to delete that, you can. But it doesn't work. We as individuals deserve our autonomy and individual respect. And that means that employee-owned creates that. There's that inherent equality and ownership in what you do instead of just giving our years, our time to someone else's vision. Makes me crazy. So anyway, that one too.
Well, thank you for that beautiful vision, and I agree with it fully. And I just hope that we're, ahead of the curve enough to like keep that vision strong over in northeastern Michigan, because that's why I'm here and I want to stay here. So I don't want to be chasing this dream somewhere else. Well, as we wrap up, Julie, I just was going to invite you to let everybody know where to find you, if they want to reach out to you, if they want to know more about what you're doing, your Rewilding company.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm over on Chisholm Street, 526 West Chisholm. And my shop hours are online, Rewildings, and it's an S at the end, .net. I believe is what I put it as. I never Google myself.
We'll put it in the show notes. So
Thanks, there you go. But the shop hours are Wednesday through Saturday, noon to 6.
And what do you have at the shop?
Sure, yes. So it is brand new, so I'm still filling my shelves, but I have a storefront that is carefully selective items of that I think are like the worst culprits for toxicity in people's lives. So a good example would be spices. Those are the most toxic and highly carcinogenic things that you'll have in your kitchen, in your whole house, next to your cleaners. And so I have some of the best spices that you could ask for.
Do you have cleaners too?
Not yet, they're coming in. So again, filling it out. But so the shop has those great examples, and I love to talk with people about why. And that if they don't want to buy my stuff, I want them to know I want them to be armed to go out to buy their own things in alignment. So great, I don't like those particular spices, but after talking to Julie at Rewildings, I know not to look for, this type of filler. I know not to look for this particular ingredient because it really means fiber, which really actually means wood that I shouldn't be consuming. All of those tricks. So they come out, whether they purchase something or not, more informed. And an informed consumer in this day and age is necessary for survival, in my opinion. So that's the storefront. And then people are welcome to come in during shop hours and have tea in my community room. And there's complimentary tea. And you can come in and sit and talk, and not with me necessarily. Bring in a friend, whatever, and you can just sit and relax. I wanted to create a space where people could just go and relax and have conversation about these subjects.
Yeah.
And then you go in a little bit further, and that is the room that I call the workshop room. And I'm building that out within the next couple of months to be a bulk room for your cleaning products, for you to make your own cleaning products, and for you to make your own like deodorants, lotions, all sorts of things. They're actually far easier to make than we give them credit for. Mm-hmm. And then you can circumvent that whole, I need to know the name of all of these ingredients that really only a chemist should know in order to be safe when I purchase stuff. You can circumvent all that. You made it yourself. Yeah.
Thank you for all that.
Yeah, so that's all of that. Oh, and I guess the other stuff is that I do on off shop hours, which is actually my main business and the longest business that I've had. And that's where I do my mentorship, my education, and my consultants. So I work with businesses to help them reconnect with all the different parts of their authenticity, to be able to be cleaner, all sorts of things. I work with groups and individuals to help them reconnect to the parts of their lives so that they can, like we said at the beginning of the show, walk a more holistic, authentic life and reclaim that wild way of being that I think is a whole way of being. Yeah. And then when you live from that space, that rewilding life where you're in connection with your body and you listen to your instincts and your movement and your emotions, you hear your dreams, that inner voice, you connect with nature when you're outside, you live from that whole rewilded way of being, is a completely different world than what you had come from. And again, that's the only way that we can live from who we were meant to be. Yeah. And then that's the only way we can give the gift of that individual life to the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
So that's what I do in off shop hours.
So is that through the Rewilding name? correct? And to understand fully, you work with individuals, groups, or businesses to make them more holistic and back to.
Yeah, I actually just went in and worked with Go Fetch this last week, which was a lot of fun. But yes, the businesses, it seems like, how can you work with a business? There's a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you easily get overwhelmed in a business.
I was just going to say, as a business owner, there would have been many times I would have said, hey, can you come in? I am overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm in operations so much. I don't have time to think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Here's what's my dilemma. What do you see from the outside? That's a beautiful tool to have. So there's a tool. Beautiful. Well, thank you, Julie.
Yes.
Before we wrap up, I'd just like to open up the space because this is an authentic, share your truth type of situation here. So anything that we haven't covered, if there's a story you'd like to tell or a message you'd like to give or anything you'd like to tell to the audience, just in closing, that would be that.
Yeah, we talked about so much. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I think the only thing would be that I do truly believe that we are at a precipice, as you pointed out, as individuals, as communities, as species. And we are at a point where we can choose to create something very beautiful that might be very, very difficult to reroute, but worth all the effort. Or we can do what has been done all these many years before us, even pre this country. What the human species has just ad nauseum repeated destruction, creation, destruction, creation. And that's sort of a part of the life cycle to a certain extent. But when we're creating a culture and a life way, we don't have to stick with what has been done. We can be the creative energy and life forces that I think that we truly are. Because that's all a culture is our creation from our imaginations. And so this is our opportunity to do something differently maybe than has ever been done before, and to take these wisdoms on an individual level and a collective level and bring us into a better future. I think it's best to start on an individual level, but I think once you start to listen to that individual part of yourself that has wanted to be heard maybe your whole life, and you allow it to begin to speak, that acorn, to begin to bloom and grow into the oak tree you're meant to be, all of a sudden you're inspired to bring your community into it. So I would just say that that is a vision I would hope people would consider and take into their next steps, wherever it takes them.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for that holistic view of our internal being, all the way out to our community, all the way out to the world, and how we function as humanity in general. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again on Harbor Spaces. Thank you. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Beautiful.